Button is it? That one. Oh,
Ready to go live? We're
we're
on.
live. We're live, babe. We're live.
Coming at you. Oh, I need a lip.
Get a lip. I got a bold lip going on. Got
Yeah,
a
I just got a little nude lip gloss.
okay, nude.
Yeah.
Okay, but
We
it's Friday
live,
night.
baby.
We live. You know, a little nude is good. A little nude, but I'm like, it's Friday night.
A little gloss situation. Like, get out,
Little gloss
Karen.
situation.
Okay. All right.
Hey, hey, everyone in the internet land. Welcome to our Educators of Color Happy Hour. I'm Celia Carey. I am the Director of Education for Maroon Arts and Culture.
Yes.
Next to me is
I'm L-
our producer. Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
LJ. I'm the founder of Maroon Arts and Culture and the executive producer. And I'm here to just pick the brains of these educators because I have retreated from the classroom, child. I had to run. So I'm trying to see what they talking about.
And I'm Bianca Kemp. I am a little bit of everything, an educator, an administrator, every other tour that's within the school. I think that I've probably done at this point. Hi, everybody.
So let's start here. This is an informal situation.
Yes.
This is a virtual happy hour because
We casual.
real casual because pre-COVID we would have actually been at an actual happy hour on this here Friday that the Lord has given.
Yes. Having a champagne and a charcuterie board. You feel me?
With all the meats and the cheeses. Yum,
The
yum,
meats
yum,
and
yum,
the
yum.
cheeses. But alas.
Here we are. So where are y'all's drinks? Let's talk about that because
Let's talk about it.
I'm already
Let's
there.
talk.
So it's
Binks, where's your drink? Can
I don't have one.
you tell us more why?
It is 7:04 p.m. I just got home about maybe 30 minutes ago from work. I did
same.
actually, yeah. I arrived this morning to work at about 7 and I left around 6:30 and I'll be back there tomorrow at around 8 on
On
Saturday.
But
on
it's
a Saturday?
Yep.
Somebody get Bianca a calendar because we don't do we do that on Saturday?
Believe it or not, that's actually something that I think that people don't know about education is that your weekends are not always your weekends. Um, so many educators spend time planning on weekends because they can have interrupted time to do that. Things, especially things around the building that need to be done when they need to be free, are done then when empty of people.
But hold on, Miss Kemp. Hold on. They absolutely got to be paying the teachers for this time on the Saturdays in the days after the school when they grading the papers and writing the lesson plans and
That's
whatnot.
the time and a half, right?
No, absolutely
Time and a
not.
half. Yeah, time and a half. Time and a half.
No, no,
Oh.
absolutely not. Those late emails, those days that you go in, all of those times, no, all of those are totally unpaid. I honestly don't know, and this is real talk. I don't know one educator that truly cares about kids that works a true 40-hour schedule.
Oh, wait, never lied. And you know what? We actually have some testimonial. Y'all ready? Y'all ready for this fancy?
Oh.
Up until
Oh.
11:30 most nights, and again at 4:30 a.m.
Yep.
This is just a universal issue in the world of education, right? Like, everybody knows that teachers are overworked and underpaid, but people don't really understand how overworked they really are. When I was in this public school system, I was a theater teacher. So drama club, performances, you leave the building at 1 or 2. Ask your theater teachers, they got keys to the building.
They do.
That's how real it is. Theater teachers got keys to the building
Yep.
because they come in before anybody else is in.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts. I still need to know why y'all don't have a beverage. Why?
Well, the reason I don't have a beverage yet because I just got out of a meeting with some teachers. I'm a teaching artist now, so I let the teachers do their thing, and then I come through once a week for an hour and teach theater stuff, and then I roll out. But because I work with teachers, I be on teacher schedules, and those teachers just got off work, So I just got off work. So today is one of those days when I had to follow a teacher schedule, and it's delayed my happy hour by a couple hours, you know.
I need
So
y'all to go make a beverage.
Okay, so this is what I was going to propose. So because I actually have something that I'm drinking something tonight that requires several steps. So why don't you tell the people about Freedom School, and while you do that, me and Binks will pour up. And then my friend Emily said that they're mandated to have a Google Voice number so that they can be contacted. Do you guys do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who answers it? You know, who answers it?
I have one.
I have one too.
Yeah.
I'm not mandated to have one, but my laptop is the same number as my my desk phone at my desk. We have Skype for business. So when I call, I can call from my laptop and it shows up as the school that I work on at call people, and the parents can also call me. So my laptop rings, and so I would have to answer it. So who answers it? We do at all times of night. We're completely accessible to parents, emails, you know, at any given time. Any given time.
That's absurd. All right, so Celia's going to tell the folks about Freedom School and the classes we're offering. And me and Binks are going to go get a drink.
Oh, well, sure. Hey, y'all. I am here because I am the director of education at Freedom School. Freedom School is as a part of the nonprofit that LJ has started called Maroon Arts and Culture. And at Maroon Arts and Culture, we are offering 4 different virtual learnings that kids can enroll in. So our mission at Maroon Arts is empowerment through arts education and cultural programming. So we want kids to sign up. We're a nonprofit, so we're really here because we care about the culture. And we are offering a few classes. I'm doing the book club. Our friend Johanse is teaching a math empowerment class, and LJ, our founder, is teaching a drama critics club and some other drama theater things, playwriting for teens. So if you have some kids who are bored, or they're homeschooled, or they need some supplements to the things that they've been doing in virtual learning, please sign your babies up at maroonarts.com. If you have any questions, you can email us at info@maroonarts.com. We will answer it and get right back to you. But we care about the culture, so we want kids to get in there and learn from us. So I'm about to bring them back because I don't know why I keep feeling like I'm the only one that's having a beverage, and we all deserve a beverage after today. Pretty much every day, as they said, we're all, me and Bianca Kemp are educators in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I teach at the middle school level. Ms. Kemp is a director of operations for a charter school. And so we are tired. This online learning is, as you can tell, is always the jokes, you know, with the parents working with their kids. But imagine being a teacher parent where you have your own kids and you're teaching online. Yay. So I am a teacher parent. So I've been going through the struggle as a parent with my son as he's been doing virtual learning, and it has been hard. And at the same time, on the other end, as the teacher, trying to get some engagement out of kids through a screen. And so it is not the most ideal situation, but we all have taken the best of it. So if you haven't told your kids' teacher, thank you, we love you, we're praying for you, or whatever it is that you do, I would encourage you to even send a kind word via email, because there's a lot of absurd things they're asking teachers to do. We're teaching kids in person and kids online at the exact same time simultaneously. It is crazy. And all the amount of planning that it takes behind the scenes to get it done, you could never know how many hours teachers spend on this stuff. And so please, if you have any kids in any grades, K through 12, just reach out to the teachers and say, hey, I'm thinking about you, because they are working hard. And I try to appreciate my son's teacher every day. And I still know it's not enough. I just want to send her Starbucks gift cards and bottles of wine or whatever I can send her, you know, packs of paper, felt pens, whatever it is us teacher folks love. I just want to send it to her because it has been real. And I really and honestly feel that COVID not only has changed our lives forever, I think COVID has changed the way we do education in the United States of America forever. And so I want to look back at this video one day, and I want to be on the record of saying that education as we know it, public education in the United States of America, will not ever look the same as it did before COVID. That's just the way I feel. Now that we see how much can be done online, more options. There's more educational options for parents. And especially as a part of the Maroon Arts and Culture community, a lot of Black parents in particular, and parents of color, are looking at pulling their kids out of the public schools. And that is where we come in, when you want to have this different education experience that's told from the perspective of people of color. And that is what we're here for. If you don't know what a Maroon is, a Maroon was a person of African descent. They were usually enslaved persons, and they were the ones who ran away and created their own communities. So do not believe the hype that all of the enslaved Africans, none of them rebelled and this, that, and the other. There were full-blown Maroon communities. Even in my hometown where I'm from, in Greenville, Mississippi, Mound Bayou is a Maroon community. It was a community founded by enslaved Africans who got away, and they created their own communities. And that is kind of what we're doing here through our education here. If these girls don't have something to drink right now, I'm fighting. Let's see what they doing. You better have a beverage or something going on. Y'all, that, yeah. Yeah, wait. Oh. Let me just make sure y'all off the mute. Okay, there we go. Hey, sugars.
Hey, we're back. We're back.
Oh, you got a beverage in your hand.
Yes, girl. When I tell you what I made myself, you're not even gonna be like, what, girl? Because you're gonna know.
It looked real pretty. It's pretty.
It's a cantaloupe daiquiri, girl. Yes.
Knock the cantaloupe.
You know.
It's frozen. That's a beverage.
I have kombucha because that's all that I have right now. Sorry.
Ma'am.
Kombucha. You on a diet?
You need the probiotics
for a while, but this is all I got today. So Sacred Life.
Listen, that kombucha man with the little truck was at the farmer's market the other day, and I wanted some kombucha off tap.
Look, don't drink the kombucha on an empty stomach. You might get drunk now.
It does have alcohol content.
No,
it does.
I'm good.
You might get drunk. No, I'm having a cantaloupe daiquiri over the holiday. Oh, I like this setup. This is cute.
Yeah.
Over New Year's Eve, me and Sil and our friend Brooke, who's in the comments, we went to New Orleans, and I just had the best cantaloupe daiquiri. Trying to recreate it, girl, but it ain't the same. It ain't the same. All right.
And I'm just drinking a red wine. I was just talking about the state of education and how, folks are looking for alternatives, and I don't think education will ever be the same again post-COVID. I don't think we'll ever go back to the way things were.
All right, y'all, since we all got our drinks, should we start asking the hard questions? Because I have something that I want to ask y'all.
Oh, Jesus. I got to be a professional right now. Let me drink to that.
Hold on. Let me see if I look better with this light off in the background. I just don't want nobody to be able to see my dirty kitchen now.
And listen, we need to see the educators' kitchens be dirty because we can't clean them. And we need help. We need help. Send help, please.
You should educators should get like complimentary butlers, right?
At least assistants. Like we need an assistant. All educators should come with a personal assistant that goes to their home and also works there.
Does windows and laundry.
And lesson plans and papers and make copies.
All right, so this is my question.
She's serious now.
School choice.
Okay.
It's a hot button issue because the powers that be, and by the powers that be, I mean white supremacy, is rooting for school choice because they want to be able to take their taxes from their property taxes and get a voucher and use it on that fancy. Are we cussing?
Are we Listen, I haven't
I've
said
never been to an educators happy hour where we didn't, but Bianca said no, and she's the operations manager.
no, baby. We not gonna cuss on this
You
one.
guys know how I am. I'm an old school administrator. It's like, yeah, no, we not no.
We gonna wear pantyhose with them slacks, baby.
All right, Bianca done handed me my modesty cloth, y'all. She done handed me the modesty cloth. All right, but they want to they want to take their property taxes, right, and get a voucher and use them on that fancy private school that they sending their kids to, essentially defunding. Oh, Brooke said I can't cuss either. She's so bossy, gosh. But essentially defunding public schools, right? And so as public school teachers, it's like, no, we don't want that. We also know that a lot of our students of color and our parents of color don't necessarily own, they rent. And if you rent, then what happens? Do you get a voucher? So, but at the same time, if we're talking about people of color taking control of their kids' education, do we want to have more flexibility? What y'all think about it?
It's a double-edged sword, that's for sure. So, I mean, like you said, on one end, it could benefit, of color who are looking for other options where they want something more culturally relevant. But how many of those charter schools exist? I mean, I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure that's a number I could Google. I'm not for sure though. But it's like, I feel like a lot of the charter schools are still not focused in particular. You know what I mean? So I see both sides because I've worked in the charter and I've worked, even though our charter was a little different, right? Bianca, that was an alternative dropout prevention charter. But, and I work in public schools. So I see both, and I've worked in very affluent communities in public schools and very impoverished areas in public schools. And it's very different what those, it's very different what those two public schools look like, between those two. So I don't know. I don't know. I want to come to beans, but I know we're on live or whatever. Bianca, what do you think?
I can't even go beans. Okay.
I think, I see both sides of the coin, and I feel like many times people want to point to like, this is the problem with education, but in actuality, whether you actually like do divert funds away or you do, like, schools are still underfunded anyway.
Period.
So until that gap is really met, there's not really an equitable solution to anything. It's already inequitable, and talking about changing the system to be something different isn't going to actually fix the problem. It's just going to divert money from one pot to another.
Just moving it around.
Yeah, it's just moving it around.
And that's what I was going to say is as usual with white supremacy, as you say, LJ, the whole system of how schools gets funded is racist. So, I mean, you have to start right there, right? We can go back to the history of redlining. And if redlining is real, because it is, then when they set up the system that home taxes, land taxes paid is what funds schools, and you did redlining, you already know that the more affluent areas are going to get more funding than areas who do not. Now, the government's tried to step up and provide these grants and this, that, and the other, but it's so many stipulations on that money that it's hard to use the money that comes from the Fed. And you have to be so exact. It's ridiculous. It's almost impossible to really use the funds that the Fed send appropriately with all the requirements.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm just gonna call it a spade, call it how I see it. There's a district in Dallas called Highland Park, and Highland Park is not necessarily a city, it's a neighborhood. But because they're so affluent, some of their residents includes George Bush Jr., they have literally drawn a line around their neighborhood, declared it its own school district, and now all of the money, the property taxes from those those wealthy people, and in that rich neighborhood, that money only goes to Highland Park schools. And so it's like, even like you said, you gotta take it down to the studs. The way that we fund schools is already a problem. And so it's like moving money from one place into another is not going to work. You're just going to have more people doing like Highland Park and drawing a line around their neighborhood and declaring it its own district.
Yeah.
Listen, people that are on here and not from Texas, I implore you to Google Highland Park ISD. This is the city of Dallas, which is huge. Highland Park is in the middle, and it is a circle, and it is in the middle of Dallas Independent School District. And it does not, their little district in the middle does not have anything to do with the funding of Dallas ISD, and all of those homes in there are worth multi-millions of dollars.
It's right across from SMU and the George Bush Presidential Library, and George Bush lives in that neighborhood. It's very affluent, and their property taxes don't support Dallas Independent School District at all. They literally decided to draw a red line around their neighborhood. They're not a city. They get their own district within a district. And so when you got people doing stuff like that, pulling shady stuff like that, you really do have to like ask yourself, like, are we really doing what's best for our kids? Because not far down the street is Lang Middle School, and that's where, I was trying not to get too specific, but that's where we met.
That is where we met. That's where the three of us
met. And so our experiences are varied, but we come from we've seen the school system and the way that it works be at its worst. I'd say that we've seen it at its worst. And all three of us have seen it at its worst. And so that's part of what makes us passionate about what it is that we do in the classes we offer and the students that we cater to. Because, you can put a brand new, listen, look, now y'all done got me with my cantaloupe daiquiri now. And you're going to make me call out all the, Brooke said I can't cuss. Bink said I can't cuss. But you're going to make me call out all the garbage, because with our old middle school, what they did was they built a brand new middle school off the freeway behind a car dealership, in the middle, like right in the middle of a neighborhood full of apartment complexes. And part of the reason why they did that was to pull those apartment complex kids out of the other school, which was a majority white school and, a pretty well-performing school, by putting that middle school right in the middle and just changing the name by one letter, basically, and they pulled all the transient kids, because that means the kids that move around a lot. If you're in the middle of a bunch of apartment complexes, you probably have a lot of transient students that move around. And they pulled all the transient students out of that school and put them all in the same place. And how does that affect funding? Because you get your funding based on attendance, right? Yep. I mean, they up to all types of shenanigans up in here.
And there's no homes, so there's no property taxes going there. But I just wanted to, just as a side note, like how I want you to, it made me think when LJ mentioned the specific schools and was nervous about it. And it made me think about how educators are really like afraid of retaliation. Like it is real serious that school districts, there's such a high level of moral turpitude that teachers are expected to never speak out about anything. We can't name our specific schools. Like it is bad press. It is bad press. And I don't know, it's like, I don't know. In Texas, teachers can't even strike. It's against the law. You can't even strike in the state of Texas.
Which, if you're in the state of Texas, you might find that's like, oh, well, it's teaching, it's something different. But just know that out here in Los Angeles, where I live now, the teachers went on strike and they struck for long enough for kids to be out of school. And them kids were out of school, and all of a sudden people, they had a change of heart in some areas. So please believe that striking and coming together as a unified force, there's power in that. And then you have to ask the question, well, why doesn't the state of Texas want us to do that? My sister calling me. Hold on.
Y'all what do you think about that, Bianca, that teachers can't strike? And you are an old social studies teacher, so how
I'm on the live.
Like, oh my God. How Bianca, like how does Texas get away with allowing teachers or making it where teachers cannot strike?
I mean, it really just goes back to like when you look at the history of Texas, you see like the why. So like looking back at a lot of laws that were created in Texas and things like that from a long time ago, the laws aren't necessarily written from the perspective of like the working man. It's
Mhm.
written from the perspective of the ruling class. And so when you look at that from that perspective, like you probably wouldn't necessarily give power to the powerless willingly. You would use it to your advantage. I feel like specifically for educators, it's what normal rules kind of exist in like the private sector in a way. They don't necessarily apply to educators. And there's something about the idea of education that we've gone with the idea that somehow this profession is different from other professions. Like somehow, like, yeah, we normally do that in the workplace. Yeah, we normally, like we stop at this or we don't do this. But over here, oh no, like you guys gotta like take it all on, take it all in, make it happen, make it work. I think about the time, like when we were all teaching together and like we didn't have resources. We didn't have books, like, or the books that we did have weren't necessarily sufficient or up to date. I mean, some of those books were 12 plus years old. Think about what's happened in our world in 12 plus years when you're trying to teach history. But either way, we still made it happen and we still like were able to make those kids succeed. But that's because
Mhm.
we cared, like
Ooh. Let me just tell y'all, my very first classroom was in an old computer lab, which was fine because the computers worked. Okay. Like I taught sixth grade theater in a computer classroom. So that means all the space in the room was taken up by tables with computers on them that didn't work. So
And I taught in a room with no windows or anything, and I had a kid throw up in there, and it was really meant to be like a storage space. Because at the beginning of the year, they told me that I would be one of the traveling teachers with a little cart, and then the day before, it was like the Friday before school was about to start on Monday, they were like, "Oh, we found a space for you," and it was a closet, and I was really thankful and appreciative of that closet that they put me in until I had 35 kids in that closet, and it was the class right after lunch. And after, if you ain't in education, you don't know how kids get after lunch. You think they get sleepy, don't you? That's what you think. You think them kids get sleepy, baby? Them babies turn up after lunch.
yeah.
And after lunch, I had that was an after lunch class. It was fifth period with 35 kids. I had 3 kids that would sit at my desk because they could not fit in that classroom.
Mhm.
Are you kidding me? And then to think that that can even be equitable to some of the education that the kids are getting in these districts that have these multi-million-dollar homes. You know what I mean? And I'm not even going to mention when we were talking about Highland Park, how those kids in Highland Park try to like sneak their way into DISD when they get to high school for the magnet program.
Oh, you mean how their parents will buy a condo in Dallas city limits so that their kid can go to Booker T. Washington High School of Performing Arts?
Facts. That is exactly what I'm talking about.
Like how that news article that came out that you could probably Google if you really wanted to read more. That news article came out that showed that a lot of these people, because their students are showing great academic success, right? They're getting A's, they have high scores on their testing. And so when they go to audition, it's like they look like a great candidate. Well, it's because they've had the benefit of an outside of Dallas education. And now that it's time for the performing arts school to have auditions, they want to be inside of Dallas students. And, Booker T. Washington has a different set of resources than the rest of DISD.
Yeah.
Period.
I mean, they have a lot of powerful alumni that is part of the reason for that, which is amazing for them. I mean, no shade, but if it's a DISD school, they should be admitting DISD students, like people that live in the district, and maybe even people who have come from other schools within the district. I don't know. Maybe it's a matter of you can go to this high school if you went to these middle schools. I don't know.
Yeah.
When
you
go ahead,
think
Binks.
that it should make sense, like it shouldn't be that you have this all of a sudden this magical talent that just falls into your lap and has never been there before. Like the process of figuring out the equitable solution, if people really wanted it, it could be there. But the
Yep,
question
that's
is,
a word.
do you really want equity?
No, white supremacy does not. And our education system is steeped in white supremacy. So no, it does not. Even in a district like what we're talking about with Dallas, and we're just using Dallas as an example, but a lot of the large urban school districts, and they love using that language when we're talking about people of color, right? You know what I mean? Like
Urban,
large and urban. There is no desire from anyone except for those kids' parents for there to be a better education in place, because as Bush even said, somebody's got to work at McDonald's, somebody's got to pick up the trash, as if those are not actually good jobs, first off, essential workers. But secondly, you know, there's no interest in leveling the playing field for kids who come from poverty.
no. And I think that also I want to bring up too that when we're talking about the difference in education between students of color and not students of color, we're framing it that way because a lot of these schools, maybe it's different. You know, I live in LA now, so I mean, I don't know, but LA is still, you know, quote unquote diverse, but if you go into the schools, it's the same. These schools are still just as segregated now as they were before integration. There's a very, very good episode of This American Life. It's called The Problem We All Live With. So if you get a chance, please listen to it, because it basically talks about how the schools were segregated. People of color were educating their own students. We fought for integration. And then because the institution resisted integration so much, the result was just more segregation, whether it's because people were leaving the district or whether it's because redlining and the zones got redrawn. They stopped busing students in at some point. And all of these things led us to the reality that our schools are just as segregated today as they were during the civil rights era. I know when we were teaching at our middle school, I think the demographics were 50% Black, 50% Latino, if I remember correctly.
That was it. We would have an occasional white student, and that they were foster kids and things like that who were very temporary residents in the school. And I agree 100,000% that our schools, you said as segregated, I would say more. I would almost argue that our schools are more segregated now in 2020 than they were in 1960. Like it's a stark difference, you know, especially when you're in an urban area and there's suburbs. It's just a very huge difference in the demographic of the different demographic within like 20 or 30 miles. Like that's crazy to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's really
intentional.
My friend Emily's recommending the Nice White Parents podcast. You know what? My sister was telling me that I needed to listen to that podcast, and I haven't done it yet, but she was saying that she was saying something similar, that they talk about it. And then I'm also going to drop the link for This American Life, that The Problem We All Live With, in the comments. It's such a good episode. It starts with Mike Brown and Ferguson and how the news of that event kind of centered on the fact that he had just graduated from high school. And so they put it into context. What does it mean to be a recent high school graduate in Ferguson? Well, if you look at the Ferguson School District, then you understand that that was a major accomplishment for him. And it's not something that came easily. And so that's where they start that story. And they go on to talk about how our schools really are more segregated now. After I left the school where we met, which was 50% Black, 50% Latinx, I moved to another school, which was 96% Latinx, 96%, the whole school.
My campus is 98%. We feed into your old school. So
yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
We're 98% Latinx on my campus, and I can count how many Black students I've had, and I have not taught a single white student. I have not taught a single white student since I've been on this campus. I just want you to know that. Like, there's no white kids on my school, and I've only taught 2 Black students. All the rest have been Latinx on our campus. So tell me again about segregation. What were you saying, LJ?
Yeah. When I was teaching over there, the kids were learning about the civil rights in their school. And I'm like, well, what they got to say about y'all during the civil rights era? And they were like, I don't know. And I'm like, what y'all learning then? And they were like, oh, we learning about segregation. I said, okay, when was the last time you had a white classmate? These fools looked around like, hold on. They're like, wait a minute, miss.
Miss.
How it ain't no. I'm like, yes. How many Black friends you got? 2? I know, because I know how many Black kids are in this school. Yeah. And it's like kids don't see that, you know, which is good. But, you know, the episode, the This American Life episode, basically the research shows that when our schools are diverse, the test scores go up.
Yeah.
Everybody benefits from a diverse classroom. But what we're dealing with right now is the reality that that's not happening.
Yep.
And so what do we do?
And also, I think that, like, when it comes to when people think of diversity, they don't necessarily think of like the way that we think of diversity. You know what I mean? Like, when I think of diversity in a school, it's like, I want this school to look like a whole, like, melting pot rainbow. I want my kid to be in a class with someone that is different from them in every single way. But sometimes, especially now, like, some old school educators will sit there and look at it and say, like, oh, well, we have Black and we have Latinx students. We're diverse. No, you're not. If everybody at the table looks just like you, comes from the same neighborhood as you, their parents have the same experiences as you're just as segregated as many of the neighborhoods that you're not allowed to be in.
Mhm.
that they're not allowed to be in, baby.
Hold on, it's choking as it goes down.
And that's really crazy to me, because when I was thinking, like, I think President Obama was here at a diversity conference like maybe a couple years ago, and by a random twist of events, I actually got to go. It was really random. Like 15 minutes before, I'm like, I'm in this thing. So and that's one thing that he said. And he said, like, I'm not telling you guys like you need to go out and make a checklist and be like, one Asian, correct? A Black person, got it. That's not diversity. Diversity is, if I'm sitting at this table, can I trust that all of the people that are at the table with me will have a different perspective from me? And in the end of us having this conversation, will we all be heard? Will we all be felt? And will we all be understood? And
He's so perfect.
will we have an opportunity to speak and other people to embrace what we say?
Listen,
What y'all think in education? Is that what it's looking like?
no. I'll say this. You know, I had the benefit of going to truly diverse schools because I was an Army brat. So I was literally going to schools where the military had brought us all there. So all of my schools were like what you're saying. It was like Asian, Black, Jewish, like we had everyone on our campus. And so that learning from different cultures thing is real. Like I had some good education, I had some bad education too here and there, but a lot of those schools were really, really were diverse and were really a good education. Is that looking like the norm outside of a military base? No.
Yeah, no. I would say that my education was not very diverse, but it was kind of diverse. I'm from the suburbs of Dallas. But if you guys have ever seen Friday Night Lights, the show or the movie, that was my high school. My graduating class had like 600 people in it. And the reason I say it was diverse is because when I was there, it was still mostly white people, but it was a big group of people of color. By the time my sister came through and graduated, it was a minority majority school district, meaning the whole district was more minority people than white people. And so that means that we were kind of there in that moment where it was like a change. And so we did have a little bit more quote unquote diversity. But the thing about Texas is that it truly does often boil down to Black, white, Mexican, and not even Latino, like truly, Mexican. And I think that it's hard for people who don't fit into one of those three categories to have a voice or a perspective and so, even though you might have a good mix of those three, but like being said, like if you're not truly diverse, if people aren't being represented, then you're not really doing it the way that you think you are. My high school experience was wild. I definitely feel like I fell through the cracks. Nobody really 600 people in my graduating class, girl. I hardly even went to senior year. Nobody even noticed. So,
Same. We had about 450 in my graduating class. And I mean, I went to the important classes. If my mama on here, she know.
If my mama on here, I went to all my classes.
I did not have anything close to a diverse experience in high school, actually in any school that I went to. Just because my mom knew that like the schools that we were assigned to in our districts were historically underperforming. So much so that she knew all of those teachers who didn't teach when she was in school that were still there by the time that it was time for me to go to school. So she clearly knew that, like, at that moment, these schools aren't going to work for her because she has some potential to do some things. So I never went to the schools that were in my neighborhood. We always were 20, 30 minutes out. They weren't diverse.
Was it private school, Binks, or was it a charter?
They were private schools. Yeah. They weren't diverse, and nobody cared that they weren't diverse. Diversity
and here's the thing:
for them was, look, we have that little black girl over there, and she's smart. We're good. We got this diversity thing on lock, and that wasn't actually like the case in the least bit.
So, diversity is one of each.
Exactly. So when, they had like little people that would come, and they would possibly want to, like donate money and things like that. Like, I was the really cute token. So it was like, yeah, Bianca will give us a quick tour here and let me tell you about my school and all of these wonderful things. And it's like, oh yeah, great. When I look back on it, like, you think that, like, you're special at the time. And in actuality, I wasn't that special. I was just articulate and there.
They love to say a little black girl is articulate, Jesus.
And that was it. Oh yeah, you know my story about that. You're so well spoken that just makes you like cringe.
And I don't know why white folks don't know that is a microaggression, because I've been told I'm white. I when I was in high school, we started a step team. Shout out to Monmouth Regional High School. And at that high school, the news came to interview us, and they talked to me because I was one of the co-captains, and I was talking, and I was like, blah, 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 talking like I'm talking right now. They were like, and the lady who interviewed me was like, you're so articulate. And the fact that I can remember that now, and I'm 35 years old, old white woman telling me that I'm so articulate because I'm speaking in sentences.
Yeah.
And we look at this white supremacist president that we have that can barely form sentences. And I'm like, wow, why? Let me stop.
I don't know. We'll ask Binks and Brooke. Do we have to stop, or?
I'm going to stop.
I don't necessarily.
Normalize AAVE. Brooke, let's make that
That's what I'm talking about. Because the dramaturg in me is here to tell you that AAVE is a dialect. And like any other dialect, there are rules around it. You can't just mess up the English language and call that AAVE. No, you gotta understand double negatives. You gotta understand adjectives. You gotta understand the efficiency of dropping off the last consonants in a word.
Absolutely.
If you're a people that has a lot to say, then sometimes it's most effective to say it by dropping letters off of the ends of the words, because you know what we're talking about anyway.
We know what we're talking about. We know what we be talking about.
And let's also talk about that too, because I feel like this is really important, is that right now, like in American culture, it's trendy to talk in AAVE, right?
Trendy.
However, when you go into other places, while people will try to they'll try to bond with you over like, hey, I can say it too.
What's up, sister? It's good to see you in here, my queen.
Hey, girlfriend.
Hi, girlfriend. Welcome in. Good to see you here.
Like, won't respect you when you actually use what's a part of your culture. And that, like, I don't think people realize that's hurtful.
It is.
Listen,
you're right. You're right.
Listen, our friend Felicia Jimenez, who has her podcast, Black Joy and Bootstraps, I think that's what it's called. I don't know if that's the exact wording right now, but Sis said in a group message with Bianca that she no longer code switches at work. And that was probably the largest act of rebellion that I've heard from a person. And I'm a person that code switches very hard, very intentionally, very intentionally. And when she said that when she's in PLC that she does not code with her white colleagues, I was shooketh. And I realized I was not as woke as I claimed to be, because I don't think I'm able to do that. I don't think that. And I do feel that AAVE is a real language, and it's for real. It's a big part of my life. But I still feel the need to code switch when around my non-Black colleagues, and I don't know what to do or say about that. And it might be that army brat of blending in wherever I'm at, but I don't know.
What about your students? Do you code switch? Do you guys code switch in front of your students?
I go back and forth and I teach it directly. I teach code switching to my students. And it's only recently as I become woker, I don't know. Is that the
More
word?
awake.
More awake. I have awakened even more.
Mo woke would be the AAVE. Mo woke.
More. I'm now that I'm more woke. It's like, you know, I've been teaching kids to code switch, but I really need to be teaching kids to just be themselves and whatever that is, because AAVE is a real language and dialect. But instead, I was teaching kids, you know, when you're in a business call and when you answer, this is she. Yeah, yes, you are speaking, like, you know, the proper the England's English. You know what I mean? And standard written English, because I teach English, right? But the biggest statement of rebellion would be, this is who I am all the time. And it's so often, especially Black women, I think we do it more than Black men, and Black men may be freer in this area than us. We code switch very, very hard when around non-Black colleagues. And I've seen it my entire professional career.
What you think?
Y'all let me
Banks?
know if you've seen anything different.
I code switch so hard all day. And I do it because, like, honestly, I've seen people who don't. And like, you know, like, it's the other glass ceiling. Like, you know that they're just not going to go as far. And it's not necessarily because that they don't have the intelligence or because they don't have the capabilities. It's not that at all. It's that, like, I know that for me to be able to thrive and survive in the environment that I right now have chosen to be in, that
White supremacy.
it doesn't go as far. And especially with, like, you code switch to be heard many times, not necessarily because that's who you are.
That's a good point, Banks. Like, sometimes you have to put on a costume in order for people to see you.
Sometimes
let me tell y'all,
per my last email to to be heard, and that's what it is.
So let's talk about why I'm not in education anymore. I just, honestly, y'all, I have just truly lost my ability to honor, respect, pay any attention to these rules set up by white supremacy. I am a Maroon. I named this arts organization Maroon Arts and Culture because I felt a need to run into the wilderness in order to be free. As a person that moves in education, theater, and yoga, I just felt like all of my interests were really steeped in something I just do not believe in. And so I created this organization so that I could go to work and not have to code switch. I'm not even lying to you. Like, that was really the main motivation. Like, I cannot continue to try to be something that I'm not and talk about something within a framework I don't believe in, because I really felt it was ineffective. And I'll say this too. This moment that we're living in right now in 2020 has reassured me that my perspective is a good one. It really has. Because there's a lot of people who feel the way that I felt. I thought I was alone, but I should have known better because Maroons don't exist. There may have been one or two, maybe it was just one or two people living by themselves, but most Maroon communities were communities. They were societies. And you don't realize that you're a part of the community until you run through the woods and you find them. And so that's what we're doing. I'm running through the woods. And as we're on this journey, I'm seeing more and more people that are feeling it and that are feeling the same way that I'm feeling, where it's like, we have to take control over what we consider to be proper and appropriate. We have to take control over our kids' education and make sure that they're learning history, because the president said that the 1619 project is somehow racist. It's like, that's the kind of stuff that I just cannot. I'm sorry, I can't work under an umbrella that believes that actual true history is not real. I just can't do it. I can't teach it, and I can't even acknowledge it. And so that's why we're here right now.
Now, how me and Sil feel about this, because going all the way back
these long ass braids
history, where you have to teach kids that the cause of the Civil War is states' rights.
States' rights.
And that's how you know that when they take the state exam, that they're going to get it right to say that specific thing with any respect to even discussing the fact that people were being owned at that time. Black people were being owned, but we can't talk about that. We can't talk about it at all.
We teach that not all of the slave masters were cruel to their slaves, and at one point the textbook, I think this was called out and they corrected it, but at one point there were certain maps that would say that would label African enslaved Africans as immigrants who came to the United States for opportunity.
Yep.
See, that's that Texas shit.
And
sorry, bro.
I actually remember sitting there and there was a situation, remember? Celia, I know you remember this. There was a situation when like the kids were taking like their little mock star exam, and every single time they do this, and I feel like it's a bit of brainwashing, because it's like, here's the question: why was the Civil War really fought? And if they select slavery, because they will select it, because that is the situation, they will get it wrong.
Ooh.
So you're forcing them actually to make the choice of, when I see this, I have to understand that the right answer is actually wrong. They want me to pick states' rights, and you don't need to know anything else other than that small little veil of knowledge. That's it. Everything
That's
else.
wild. That is absolutely brainwashing, baby.
So when you think deeply about education in the United States of America, and we know that our education is created with white supremacy, is steeped in white supremacy, and we're teaching all of the kids in this country, Black, white, Latinx, every Asian, that this is true and this is fact. We wonder why we're in the situation we're in today, when even white folks got to get woke, and it's hard for white folks to seek out information, because Black folks, we're seeking it out because we don't know our history, right? Like for the most Black folks, if you asked us to do our ancestry, which I've been doing, I'm on Ancestry and did the the little swab or whatever for ancestry results. I can only go up to like my great grandparents, because at that point I start getting to white men who owned my ancestors, and it's like, for white folks, they know all of their history. So Black folks, we're more likely to like seek out information, to seek out that history, where white folks are like, my teachers taught me this in 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. It's got to be true. Why else would it be in a textbook? Why else would it be in a textbook if it's not true? It is such an unlearning that needs to be done in the United States overall by everyone that's here. It is unbelievable, and it will take, I still feel like we're hundreds of years away from that. I don't think my 6-year-old will see a day where the United States has a true equitable education and options for kids that really and truly tells the real education of this country, the real history of this country.
I disagree, Phil. I think it's coming. I think it's coming. What you think, Binks?
I mean, I think that what we're in right now, it's going to force some people to see some things that they never wanted to see before. I felt the exact same way with, like, especially with George Floyd. Honestly, I'll go back even before George Floyd. Like, I felt like personally people would have saw something with Tamir Rice that they didn't see, but they didn't see it. And so it took all of these other people to like actually see things. And so now I'm seeing like people are like, oh my gosh, things have been like this forever. We've been teaching these things like this forever. It's like, oh, but yes, like this is actually the better version than you really even knew. The other versions were worse. Going back to like where this kind of originated, textbooks are a whole like episode within themselves.
Right. They really are.
Period. Yeah, like seriously.
We're going to come back to textbooks because we're going to come back to it, because I could go on all day about the privileging of the written word, right? Like whoever writes it down gets to decide what's true.
Especially when it comes down to three states that control textbooks. Florida, Texas, and California control the textbook in public education. And Texas is the largest, last I checked. If it's wrong, you can fact check me. But last I've checked, Texas is the number one producer of textbooks in the United States. we influence every textbook. So as a Republican state, as a state that was the head of the Confederacy, that had Jefferson Davis, let me stop.
And wait a minute. So let's go ahead and add another layer of foolishness on top of the base layer. Because, you know, we can't, in Texas, we can't just have one. We have
It's multiple layers of foolishness.
Right. So along with that, just with like standardized test makers are just as bad, because what you end up doing, and I see this all the time, like especially when like you'll see some little like House bill that'll come through and it'll say like, we're going to add this to all of our Texas standards to teach, right? Which is all fine and good, except for you don't actually expect any of it to show up on a test. So what happens? The kids don't learn it. So it's really
Exactly
for pomp and circumstance. It's not actually in there because you want the kids to be educated about it. So
Yep.
what happens as a teacher? You don't have the time to teach it. So
Yep.
like there were so many, I think that especially in US history, there are so many court cases that are so fundamental to like civil rights and to like being able to speak to equality, or at least the attempt to have it. And our kids never learn it because like it never happens. Like, what is his name? Heman Sweat. That was the first, he applied to the University of Texas. And
I don't recall that case.
Give us the education, Beans. Tell us about it.
He showed up to orientation and he was Black. And people were like, whoa, like what's happening here? And they're like, how did you get in? And he was like, I applied. And and then they were like, but how did you get in? He was like, because I applied and I was accepted. And so long story short, they basically sent him home and told him like, we don't have space for you here. And
I remember that one. Yeah.
all the way up to the Supreme Court. And then they said like, yes, he actually earned acceptance because of his merits. And so like this one case ended up like literally opening up the doors of all of these other institutions of higher education for like Black and brown people.
Listen,
it's supposed to be taught in US history and it never is. And the crazy
because it's not on the test.
He's still alive.
He's still alive.
Yeah. The last that I checked.
What?
The last that I checked. Hold on.
We're gonna recruit his ass to Freedom School. He's gonna be a teacher. Because that's what we're trying to do, right? Like that's what it means to take control of your child's education. It means making sure that they learn that instead of the other things. You know, all of the, especially since it was a victory. You know, how many times do we have to talk about the 3/5 compromise, Plessy versus Ferguson, all of these things that reinforced the situation? I feel like we have to let our students know that there were victories along the way, you know, because that's how you continue the fight. But that's why they don't teach it, because they don't want the fight to continue. Like you have to let them know we can be victorious in this fight. And these are examples.
And at these textbooks, all the stuff that is relevant to like Black history, like Juneteenth or like the Tulsa, Black Wall Street and the bombing of Black Wall Street, that stuff is not even in the textbooks, or if it is not tested. And once again, as Ms. Kemp said there, if it's not tested, it's not being taught like that. I mean, I went to an HBCU and still didn't learn about the Tulsa riots. I took an African-American history class from a Black Panther at Hampton University and still did not learn about the Tulsa massacre. Like I didn't learn about that. And that's crazy. And I remember I had kids do an assignment, and one of the kids did this assignment over Harvard. And I realized that Harvard was founded in like 1630 something or something like that. And I was like, bruh, the first enslaved Africans came to Jamestown in 1619? And Harvard was already established and in education at Harvard while Black folks were being African folks were being brought in on slave ships at that same. It's such
Let's take it one step
disparity.
further. Let's take it one step further and ask ourselves, who do you think built Harvard? Who do you think was constructing the buildings? Who do you think worked there? Who listen, was it? I think it was Harvard, but it was like, or it may have been Stanford or Yale. But honestly, I know this to be a fact about one of these schools, but we can just, honestly, I feel like it's safe to assume that it's the fact for all of them. But staff members, like professors and deans, were allowed to bring enslaved people with them You get a
Yeah.
job in the Ivy League school that provides you housing, you can bring a staff. So these people were transporting enslaved people into these Ivy League situations as workers. Like we were there. We were
That's how you
in
end up with Black folks who were enslaved at the time, learning how to read and write and do all of that stuff and getting a Harvard education as an enslaved person.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think about the institution of slavery at the time, it wasn't these big plantations that we think about now. It was, it was like how you think about a servant. A family would have one enslaved person under, that they quote unquote owned. And that was the norm. It wasn't like, and it was everywhere. It was widespread. North, south, east, west, underground, deep blue sea, and space. Okay. They had slaves everywhere. Do you hear me? Everywhere. And don't let nobody tell you otherwise. So, that just comes back to like this idea of the Maroons, right? Like when you're surrounded by slavery on all sides and you decide to run you still decide to run, knowing that there's really no place that you can go, but you've made up your mind to carve out a piece of freedom for yourself in the wilderness. That's where we are right now. And that's why I told Sil, I kind of feel like it's coming. I feel like this moment for people of color to take control of their students' education, I feel like it's here. It's coming. It's here. Hopefully we'll get to talk to my friend Anthony Gordon. He's starting a charter school, S.H. James Prep School, based out of San Antonio. Before you know it, he'll have locations everywhere. And I feel like there's going to be more of that. We have Freedom School. I have another friend of mine, Ebony. She does yoga in the hood. She's offering unschool options, 2nd through, I think, 7th grade, where students can learn financial literacy, entrepreneurship. It's coming. It's coming. And I think that it's going to take a hold because, we've been here before. I don't believe in linear time, but I really feel like this time it's going to really take hold. I do.
I agree. I think that and I also think that it's people like us that have been there, done that, spent the hours, had the sweat, like all of that to be able to say, like, you know what? It needs to look different. It needs to be different. It's time.
And go ahead, Sil.
I was saying all we can do is just keep invading spaces, especially as Black women, as Black people, we just keep invading spaces. Whenever they have textbook adoption committees and things like that, I'm applying to be on it. Now, I don't know what the requirements are because I've never chosen, but I have done the applications with Texas Education Agency to be on the STAR test committees and to look at those questions and make sure that they're culturally relevant. And I am never chosen. I don't know if it's because I'm an English teacher, because they say we grade too hard. So sometimes they don't like to pull English teachers for stuff, but we have to keep infiltrating. It's nothing else we can do. The system will not be, we can't change the system until we get into the system and we're the people that can make the changes to the system. You know what I mean?
Right. So what you have here is you have two different paths, right? So it's like we have to infiltrate the system and we have to get in there. I think that's a necessary path. While we're working on that, you have the maroon path, which is outside of the system, calling the system out for what it is, and then making a new system for yourself.
And I'm a person that lives in both of those areas because I'm a mother teacher, right? So I want my son to have an education like Maroon Arts, right? I want him to have culturally relevant education, and I'm in a position of privilege where I can pay for something like that. I can pay for those services for my kids to get this Black or this non-white centered education. But at the same time, I am in the public school system, and so I have to infiltrate the system and try to change the system from the inside out. Otherwise, it will continue to be steeped in white supremacy if Black and brown people never get into the positions that make change.
And it's not sustainable. But Binks, what you think, because you're a person that has kind of been climbing the ladder. I know Celia climbed the ladder. I jumped off the ladder. I was like, forget this ladder. This ladder ain't shit. This ladder raggedy. This ladder missing rungs. This ladder ain't even propped up on no good building. I got to get off this ladder. But you and y'all are climbing the ladder. And so, Binks, what do you think? Like, once you get into this position, like, can you be effective?
Yes and no. And I hate to say that, but sometimes your effectiveness is tied to whether you actually do have people who support you, people who are allies, people who recognize and want to listen to your voice. It depends on what arena you're coming into, because there are some arenas that you go into and you're like, you know what, I'm never going to be heard here. And I'll be honest with you, being a Black woman, especially like working for some years in professional environments, like it's difficult to find an organization or find a place that like values you for who you are and not just like what you can serve, you know? It's
Because they
hard.
love to call a Black woman in. They love to call a Black woman in to save the day. Education and other arenas as well, just like how we, you know, and I'm not getting into the debate of whether Kamala is Black enough, but they love to call on Black women to come in as superheroes and save the day, because Black women are magic, and that is a fact. I'll bet my little bitty itty bitty paycheck on it.
Not your itty bitty paycheck, child.
I can't think of one job that I've come into that hasn't demanded extraordinary work out of me. And I'm not talking about like just me coming in and just being like cool or whatever. I'm talking about like you have 57 different problems. You're about to have another 57 different problems, and you're expected to have some miracle solutions to make all of this. We need to go from an F to an A in 1 year type situations where like, oh, you have to save the day, like, or we're going to get shut down, or those type of things, like where you literally have to do so much work to be able to have an outcome. Like, I feel like there are so many schools that depend on people to come in and save the day, like literally like Black Panther. Like it's just it's crazy. But
Yeah.
And it's especially
they go to Black women 9 times out of 10. Like
the burden is
trouble, bail us out, make it happen.
And we can take that as a compliment. I would take it as a compliment if I didn't know the history behind it. You know what I mean? I could take it as a compliment, but even today, right now, white women and white people are like, Black women, save us. Michelle Obama, save us. Let them people live. Stop counting on Black women to come in and save the day. Like, seriously, I think we lost Bianca for a second. She might be back. But like,
yeah, you gotta do it yourself. And also too, I find that when you're dealing with these segregated schools, which we already talked about, if you're watching this on a replay, you missed it, rewind it back. But when you're dealing with the segregation of schools and you've got all Black kids, well, I mean, my experience at the school we were at was that it was mostly Black teachers too. And so to that extent, you are expected to kind of extend yourself almost in a parental way to these kids. You know, you got to mother them in addition to teaching them. Whereas I don't know that non people of color educators feel that, because if there's an additional layer of responsibility when you're a Black female teacher and you've got a classroom full of Black students and you see that they're lost and they're getting lost in the system. You know, you feel like you have to add that extra layer of support, that mothering. But I ain't never felt mothered by no teacher, because I've only had like one Black teacher in my whole, you know, K through 12 experience. I had like one Black teacher. I never felt mothered in that way or protected in that way. And I wonder, I don't know, but I wonder when you're of the majority, if you feel the need to, like, if that is there, is it there for all of your students? Is it there for the students that you know? I don't know, but I do feel like there's an additional layer of responsibility there.
I'll say this. I had a couple of good teachers, and although I did not have a lot of Black teachers, the white women teachers I had also had a motherly experience. Even with me, there was a motherly experience. Now, I am older. My teachers were older. So my teachers were old ladies. They really were. My teachers were old ladies. It was almost a grandmotherly figure. But at the same time, when you were talking about that, I was actually thinking of the burden of the Black men in education. They did not get, of shine, because first off, Black men in education are either administrators or a coach.
Yep, it's hard to find a real.
That is it. They do not want black male teachers for anything except for their athletic abilities or their abilities to discipline children in the administrative roles, assistant principal type roles. And so I think about black men and, you know, the stereotype of black fathers not being around. I just wonder if the black men that are in education feel an even larger responsibility to the black community as being father figures to our students, because I have seen almost every black male educator I know took that role on, took it on with pride, and took it on in with fidelity, that they were looked at as male father figures to almost every black kid that they taught. And so especially the coaches, of which most black educators are, black male educators are, those coaches take those boys in on that football team, and the mothers give them away. I have seen mothers, and I am now at this point, what would be considered a single mother, right? Where they take their sons to football practice and they're like, listen, sir, whatever you need to do, install or instill discipline and respect in my son, you have permission to do it. And it is a very, very common situation that I don't think gets talked about very much. Responsibility as a black male educator and their responsibility as a father figure to black kids.
Yeah, I think that's right on. That's spot on. Yeah, you're right. And thank you for calling that out. We love our black male educators. We shout out to y'all, you know what I'm saying, out here defying odds, being, you know, dressing in suits and stuff to work every day, or track suits. You know how y'all do.
Yeah. It's one or the other. It's never like anywhere in between.
It's never in between. It's either a suit or a track suit. Why y'all do that like that? Tell me about it.
I honestly can say that like everything that I've learned like in education has really like come from like some really strong like educators of color. Like it's been like really crazy to see, just because I was thinking like I never had anybody like that. Like I never experienced anybody like that like in my educational experience, but seeing it.
How sad is that? How sad is that? Think about that. And that is that is very common for students. Like literally, how sad is that? I had one black female educator and she changed my life. And I was just on a podcast the other day with my girl, Stephanie Beans, who was on the step team with me in high school, about Miss Diane Russell, who changed our lives and our view on what black women could be. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead, Miss Kemp.
Yep. And it's like now that, I mean, I had my first black teacher in college. Like I had a professor in college that was black, and she was one of the very few. Like, I think that she probably was the only professor that I had in college that was black, because I mean, let's be real. Universities, when it comes to hiring professors, are inherently racist in many ways. And so she was like wonderful. But I remember thinking like, why didn't I have that experience? Like, what else is there out there? And then coming to education, I kind of saw like, okay, now I get it.
Listen, I went to an HBCU and still, I mean, I had a good, my teachers were all of color, but my first black female doctoral professor was Dr. Johnson at Hampton University. And that woman was fly. And that was the first time in my life where now I understand at the age that I am that representation matters.
Yeah.
I had never that I could have a doctorate degree. I had never thought that I could teach at the collegiate level until I saw Dr. Johnson walking there with that skirt suit on and the nails done and that hair laid and them edges laid and them glasses taut on her nose and the jewelry on her that matched from her ear to her neck to her finger. Okay. And I think she might have been an AKA. I don't know. Lighter than a paper bag. And she walked in that bad boy and she taught me Black psychology, which is a class at Hampton University if you're a psychology major. And that woman blew my mind every day. She taught me something every day. But that the other part was I could be her. And I had never thought of being a college professor until I saw her. So if we think about our kids that are younger, who, if they never see anyone that looks like them, they might not even think they could ever be a teacher or a professional or anything of the sort without just seeing someone in that position.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it is that serious. It is that serious.
Yeah.
Which is why it's like I do kind of go back and forth. Like as a person that I consider myself a maroon, I can't do the institution, but it's important that we have a presence because the students that are left in the institution can't be left without representation, and that's why what you two do is so important.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it is important to have you all in front of the students. You know, showing up, showing your faces, showing, you know what I'm saying, your just, you know, your presence is a present. You know what I'm saying? So I think that that's really important. With me, you know, I can't do it. I can't do it. That paycheck too small, that workload too much. Them days be too long, child. Them days be too long, Lord. I cannot. But I just greatly admire you guys, both of you all, for showing up for the kids every day. Because couldn't be me, child. I could show up for Freedom School all day because in Freedom School, I could talk like this. I could be like, listen, we're going to read this play. Wait till I tell y'all about this play, y'all. And it's like,
We gonna read this play.
That's how I taught when I was, you know, teaching public school, but they didn't appreciate my style. So
going back to the point about mothering though, like mothering as a Black woman educator, like wore me out. Like it literally, like it forced me.
It's exhausting.
I'm gonna refresh my drink. I'll be back.
I can't. Like I don't know if I can do this anymore because it got so like it got so deep. It got so like just deep seated with like literally being a mother at work and being a mother at home. Like it wore me out emotionally. I couldn't do it.
It takes a lot. It already takes a lot to be an educator because we are all of those roles, right? You know, we're counselors, you're all of these things, but especially where me and you worked, Bianca, was a very unique experience working with kids who were in, you know, really high school dropouts and who were trying to save themselves by coming to our campus. You really feel a responsibility, especially once you meet their mothers, their birth mothers, or two, realize they don't have a mother, right? You know. And I mean, it was kids. I'm so glad that our friend Miss Jimenez is here. We mentioned her podcast earlier, Black Joy and Bootstraps. That she wanted to bring kids home. She literally wanted to take kids and move them into her house and keep them and like raise them and love them and feed them and make them food. You know what I mean? Like, and we still to this day have relationships with kids that we're like, we wanted to take them home and love on them. And that is that mother experience that we're talking about that goes beyond the classroom. That I don't know. I would be curious to see what our white female educators feel about that. Do they feel a motherly role? My son's teacher, she is a white woman, and she does give a motherly or grandmotherly vibe, but she definitely, you know, I think she sees herself as a mother figure to kids. So. Yeah. Oh, Jimenez. She says how hard that's been. Just about this yesterday. We had kids that meet with Jimenez every day wanted to take home and adopt and make them our own kids. Yeah.
I think that for me, like I already kind of felt it. Like before I became a mother, but when I actually became a mother, I felt it even more. Like it was so overwhelming to me. Like I have to make sure they're okay. I have to make sure that they're like, I have to talk to them about making sure that they're like, when they get on the bus and they go to the West End, they're not talking to strangers or they're not doing this, like all these motherly things, but it's like you feel like you have to do it.
Yep.
Then,
and the
worry sets in.
Yeah.
You know, like if they don't do that, what could happen? Like I'm not going to be there. How am I going to protect them? And it's like, okay, you have to step back and say like, yeah, this isn't my kid, but at the same time, like these feelings that I have are real.
And then the heartbreak that comes with, I mean, we've lost students before, you know what I'm saying? Like, as in they passed away and they died. So even that, talking about the loss that comes with losing a kid or whatever, we've lost kids on our campus because they were in dangerous lifestyles, you know, because of poverty. Because they were born impoverished, because of the situations they were born in. We talked about how we had kids that if they literally were born in a different place or to a family who had more money, that they could be scientists, doctors. They could be anything in the world that they want to be. Instead, because of the privilege that they lacked, because of where they were born, they literally could not achieve those same things. And they had to take on this persona of being a gangsta, being this or that or the other. When really, they really just were geniuses. And they were geniuses, but they have to have a tough persona in order to make it through the hood.
Yeah.
Because you can't walk experiments when people see you and want to fight you on the street.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sad and it's hard.
I think about our middle school students all the time and where they ended up. Actually, you know what? That's funny that I say that because a lot of our middle school students ended up at your overage charter school.
They did. They did. The kids that we taught when we met that year. So what year was that we worked there together? Was that 2010, 11?
Yeah, that was my first year teaching, 2010. Yep. And then Binks came. Did you come 2010, Binks?
I came in 2012.
Miss Kim?
And yeah, like there were so many of them that I ran into, and it was funny because like many people will say like, oh, like these kids have these bad habits and they do this and they do that. But when I would get them in my classroom, they would be like, you got a binder for me, miss? Yup.
Yeah.
I got to do my do now every day? Yup.
Yeah.
You going to be grading it too. I sure am. All right.
Because those kids.
And newsflash. They sat there when they had all of those different constraints and they were like, I got to do this. I got to do this. I know she's going to call my mama. She got to do. They did it. And it wasn't necessarily a situation where little so-and-so was that like terrible. It was that no, like maybe they needed somebody to tell them that they needed this kind of structure because this is how I'm going to be able to teach you. And this is how you're going to be able to learn.
Yeah.
And once they got it, they did just fine.
And I'm so glad you said that because it was the same for me where they'd be like, this kid can't do this, can't do that. They come to me and I'm like, that's the whole stereotype that these kids don't care about their learning is not true. This whole stereotype of our parents not caring about their kids' learning is actually not true too, because I run across the occasional parent who is like, listen, whatever. But for the most part, both my Latinx and my Black parents were like, what is it that little such and such is doing? And what is this now? He not getting his education. He not getting his lesson. And they would get with their children and they cared about it. So I rarely ran across a parent that did not care about their kids' education. And I rarely ran across a kid that didn't care. The kids who they don't care because they're struggling and they don't know any other way to say, I don't know how to read. I don't know.
They feel defeated.
Yeah.
And they've been beat. I wanted to cuss right there. They've been beat the F down from every single person that has worked with them. So why should they do anything else? Like, what is the purpose at this point? You get a kid that's in 11th grade. He's been beat down since kindergarten. Why should he do anything else? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. And that's
especially if he's almost out too. Like it's hard to find motivation. If you're constantly telling a student that they are not capable, then they will very quickly start to believe you. And if they believe that they're not capable in second grade, third grade, then it ain't nothing but an uphill battle to empower them by the time they get to 10th, 11th, 12th, you know? And then it's like, you know, then all of a sudden they're supposed to care about college readiness, you know, and all these kinds of things. It's like literally nobody has given a crap about them up until this point. But because the high school wants to be able to say, that we have this percentage of our student body going into college. Now, all of a sudden, it's an area of focus, but no one has encouraged the student.
Let's talk about that in itself. Because college readiness doesn't start when you get ready to go to college.
We thought it did in my family. I've got a rude awakening in 12th grade. I was like, sign me up for Yale. I was like, I'm about to go to Yale. I want to go to Northwestern. I'm trying to get to all these schools I've been hearing about. But listen, y'all, ain't nobody told me nothing. I didn't know that in order to go to those schools, you had to be on a plan to get into that school from the time you enter high school. How would I have known that?
Well, I'll tell you my experience. I did all of those things because I mean, y'all know me as a person. You know that like I'm Like I'm super organized. I'm
Queen's
like,
got the
oh,
paperwork.
okay, I have notes. Like I'm the girl that you get the notes from classroom when you stupid. Like I'm that chick.
Or the PD, the class or the professional development.
Yeah.
She got the
Why
notes.
weren't you at PD today? And I had everything to be able to get into college. Like I was good. And I remember going to like we had like she was a guidance counselor. She was really like she did nothing. She was just there in a nice office getting paid way too much money to do way too little. And I went to her and I said, you know, like I really want to go to college. And she was like, no, I don't really think that's for you. What I really think that you should do is just try a community college. And if you succeed, do something else. And I remember thinking, like, I'm number 3 in my class. Like, why would she even say
In
that?
what universe? In what universe would number 3 in the class not be looking at college? Didn't you you went to private school too, didn't you? Like
I did. And so when I was looking at it, I was like, you know, looking back, like now, none of the people that I graduated high school with have degrees, like hardly any of them. Like that wasn't the path that they chose. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that's just not what they did. But when I talked to her, she automatically felt like there was not going to be any reason for me to get any type of like experience out of college. And then when I actually went through the process of college is when I realized that like all of those conversations that my classmates have already had for years, and I'm not talking about just 4 years, I'm talking about they were talking about college in junior high and elementary school that I never had that exposure to as being a first generation college student. So all of these things that they took is like knowing just how to do, like I was completely lost.
Yep, me too.
Let's talk.
It made me realize that like those conversations that I should have been having all those years, like I missed out.
That is a conversation we need to have because first off, I had the same exact experience as you, and I was at a very culturally diverse high school in New Jersey, and my guidance counselor told me that I should consider community college as well.
Yep.
So that's really strange or intentional that we were both told. I wasn't third in my class by any means, but I definitely was like a state college like person. Like I could definitely get into state college. You know what I mean? And so the fact that my counselor was like, I guess I could say the argument now if I'm trying to be positive that she was trying to save my family a few dollars because I do regret those student loans. But at the same time, I really had big goals for myself, and I was really surprised that she wanted me to do community college. And I worked in the guidance counselor's office as an assistant my senior year. I used to stuff their envelopes and read everybody's SAT and ACT scores all day. I worked there during a period during the school day. So that was super odd. What was the other thing that you said that I connected to? The counselor telling us that we should not go to community college.
Being lost when you got there.
Oh, well, that's normal. I was lost when I got there. It was another Black issue, but I can't think of it right now. So I'll let it go. But I was just like, that seems intentional, or is it not? Oh, I was going to say something about college being the only choice. So you said something and you were like, not to say that what they chose was bad. It is like so looked down upon to tell kids that they can be, listen, plumbers are making more than teachers nowadays. Trash pickup people are making more money than teachers nowadays. No lie. And they don't have nearly as much student loan debt as it took for me to have 3 letters after my name right here, right? That M.ED, right?
One more too. All of their retirement plans are 10 times better.
And they pay into Social Security because when you in Texas and you're a teacher in Texas, you do not pay into Social Security. You can only pay into TRS, which means that when you retire, you are not able to draw Social Security. But that's none of my business.
That is a fact. So if you did not know that about teachers in Texas, this whole loan state shit stuff is, sorry, Brooke, is real serious.
Unless you leave education and you switch over to the private sector.
And you would have to roll your money.
We're doing, and I understand why.
Yeah, I think you have the option to roll your money, right? From teacher retirement system, TRS. But in Texas, teachers do not pay into Social Security. So I worked in New Jersey and Virginia, and that is the only times that I paid into Social Security. Since I've been in Texas since 2007, I have not paid into Social Security at all. I only paid into teacher retirement system because I've been teaching since 2007.
You know, talking about the college experience, like I don't even think I had a guidance counselor. I had an assistant principal that used to be on me when I was late and tardy and absent. But at no point did anybody at my school sit down and talk to me about college options or whether or not college is something that I should do. That never happened for me at any point in time. And I you know, now that the cocktails done kicked in and, you know, the sun is setting out here, we can get deep. But like, I was really, my experience transitioning from high school into university was such a disaster. I mean, it was truly a disaster. It was just like, I mean, it was bad. It was bad.
Same for me.
It was, I flunked. I socially was not ready. Maturity wise, I was not ready. I had no clue what was going on. It was horrible. And I was angry at my parents about that for a little while, for a long time, because I'm like, y'all forced me to do this. But none of us really knew what we were doing. Like my parents, they insisted that I go to this little private school outside of Austin because it was like the best of the schools that I could go to, I guess, on paper. But it was still like, you know, I still had Black college student problems where I had to work full time. I had to work. I didn't have no car, that kind of stuff. So it just, I mean, it was all bad. But in hindsight, I can't be too mad at them because they didn't know what they were doing either. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's like, if there's no support at the school whatsoever, and the parents, you know, my dad played football, so he went to college on a football scholarship. My mom is a hustler. My mom's a hustler like me. So, you know, she went to a private school, but she didn't finish until she was, you know, till later in life. Now she got a whole master's degree and she's still going. But, you know, I just feel like if you don't get any help from the school, then where are you supposed to get help from?
But listen, this is where privilege is always talked about as money. You know, poor white folks or whatever want to be like, I ain't got no privilege and this, that, and the other. But at the same time, all of us as Black millennials, and we're on the older end of millennials.
I took a desktop to college. I ain't ashamed.
we are on the older end of millennials, and for us, our stories are very similar because I didn't come from parents that had a college education. It sounds like LJ did not either. What about you, Bianca?
Nope.
So the privilege comes with white kids who, when I talk about, roll it back to Harvard being founded in the 1600s, right? The majority of white kids are dealing with coming from adults in their families who have had a college education, and we are not privileged. I am one of the first in my family, and I got like 300 people in my family. My mom was the last of 13
That's
kids.
Just cousins.
Okay? Listen, like literally, you know,
300 cousins.
Yeah. I got 300 cousins, and I'm one of the first. I can name myself and maybe 3 or 4 other cousins. We were the first to get a college education because, you know, we came from a history of farmers and sharecroppers, right? You know what I mean? And so it's like when we talk about privilege, we have to look at the privilege that comes with the white folks that have had kids that their parents were college educated, or at least knew. My mom didn't know what FAFSA was. She didn't know what the application status was, alumni. She didn't know anything about any of that stuff because my mom and my dad were high school graduates who my dad went to the military, right? And so it's like, I was the first to get into that. And I'm gonna age myself, man. In 2003, I'm filling out a FAFSA on a piece of paper that has the pink and the yellow duplicates underneath. You know what I mean? And I was lost. I consider myself a smart person. I've read encyclopedias. That's how old I am. And I still did not know what I was doing. And so it's got to be a disadvantage that we had. And luckily it's an advantage for the kids that we have and the students that we teach later. But like, man, we went through the cracks, like really. And I think it was purposeful.
Honestly, okay. Well, let me just say my parents did have a college education. Like my dad, he started off freshman year, he was playing football at a large public school. and then he got injured, so he ended up transferring to the school where he met my mom. My mom, she started school, but she didn't finish. She finished later in life. I would say, though, that because the way that you get into school was so different between then and now. Like, I remember me and her sitting down and looking at that damn FAFSA, like, all right, here we go. Okay, all right. It was like me and her looking at the FAFSA, like, number one. Okay. And like, we literally had to sit down and go through it together like that, because I was just like, neither one of us really knew what the reality was. You know, when she went to school, it was one of those things where you go to school, you get on a payment plan, you work, you pay your payment, and then that's the end of it, kind of thing. But I'll say this too. I don't know. College isn't the end all be all. I wish, my number one regret is not taking time off. Like, my number one regret is not taking at least a year or two. I took a whole semester off. Like, my senior year of high school, first semester I had Shakespeare. I had 2 sections of office aid. I had athletics. I had the wrestling team, which wrestling season is in the spring. So I wasn't even like actively like playing against other people. I was just in the class. And then I had like 2 off periods. And then the second semester, I didn't even go. I was just off the second semester. I had met my class requirement and I just didn't even have to go. I worked for my mama. And so that wasn't even enough time for me to mature and get the information I needed. I should have taken a whole year, 2 years, community college or whatever.
But LJ, a lot of Black people don't even have that luxury, because Black folks are taught that when you turn 18, you ain't gotta get a house and nothing, but you gotta get up out of here. That's military, that's college, that's workforce. You need to figure it out, but you gotta get up out of here at 18. And it is because I feel like, for real, like, our parents could not afford to be just taking a grown person in a house. Now, your parents, you did have parents who were college educated, but my parents were not able to just be like, you just stay here as long as you want to stay here and just be staying here. I needed to go out in college, workforce, or military. I need to go on. And so I think that's also another issue within the Black community, that when you turn 18, you grown, where a lot of non-Black communities are like, you can still stay here and get on your feet and then get out and buy a home and start a business or whatever it is you want to do.
Or go have a little adventure and then come back and decide what you want to do.
Gap year.
Backpack through Europe.
Yeah.
Has a whole name.
But you know what? But you know what? This is going to give 2020 is giving a lot of people the opportunity to have a gap year that wouldn't have had a gap year before.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, there's so much terrible stuff going on in the news and so much trash around 2020, but it might be the ultimate equalizer. I mean, you know what I'm saying? 2020 might be the catalyst for change that we need, because for me in the arts segment, it's making changes in the arts world. It's making changes in the education world. It's making changes in the corporate world, and it's making people stop and look around like, wait a minute, what is really going on here?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
But too, I read an article, I don't remember where it was from, but it was saying that like literally, like, Corona is making every millennial like rethink their whole life. Like, really,
yes.
Because honestly, when you think about it, for us, like, this is the only time that we've kind of like slowed down since we've entered the workforce. We've never actually had a time where we can say like, okay, like, we didn't have a gap year. None of us got that luxury. We didn't have the opportunity to really stop because the pressure was on us once we graduated college to go into the workforce to be able to pay back these loans, because you don't have any money anyway. And then, so now we're like, well, I spend all of my time working. Like, what is it that I can do that actually feed like my interests? Like, where is that career?
And to be more specific, to piggyback on you, Bianca, is that teachers are leaving the profession in flocks, and I need parents to be concerned. And
okay,
I don't think anyone has talked about it, but as a person who has a lot of teacher friends, Teachers are leaving the education field. They are finding other things to do. They're getting paid more money. They're working virtually from home, and they are not dealing with all of the politics that come in with education and with public education, especially. And I need parents to be concerned. Parents need to be going up to the school board. Okay, if you want to keep your kids teachers, you need to be going to the school board and complaining and fighting for teachers' rights, because we're leaving, baby. We are qualified. We have degrees, multiples of them. We have leadership abilities. We work with kids. We know how to work with adults. We have a plethora of experiences. So when you add all that together, we're leaving the field, okay? And we're finding someone who will pay us more than $50,000 a year.
I've been trying to express this to my friends that I know are parents. Like, y'all should be concerned because y'all are fighting to put your kids back in school. And that fight is making teachers leave the school. Okay. And when the teachers leave the school, you got to think about who's left. Yeah. Like who doesn't have the option to leave the school? That's who's teaching your kids.
That's who's there.
Why don't they have the option? That's why you need to dig deep. You know what I'm saying? Before you start fighting for your kids to go back on campus, understand that when your kids are going back on campus, the teachers are leaving the field, and it ain't gonna be nothing but Trump supporters and bad teachers left.
Listen, we lost 2 veteran teachers who have been teaching for over 20 years, and they were good. They were not done in their profession. Understand that. These women were fresh. They were 20 years in. They had a strong command of education. And because the school district did not have any options for them, except for them to teach face-to-face and online simultaneously, they decided to retire. Like, that is it. So you're losing veteran teachers. You're losing teachers who care about their health. You're losing teachers who care about science. You're losing teachers in the field who are concerned about their health and their kids' health and all this kind of stuff.
And they have kids.
You want to send your kids back because you don't have anyone to keep them. You need daycare. So you need to figure that out, because it is a problem, and it's a big problem. And when you only are left with the scraps of teachers, you got the scraps of teachers left, and you wonder why your kid ain't learning anything, because all the teachers and the teachers who had sense enough and had credentials to go elsewhere went elsewhere. Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised, because you wanted us to risk our lives and our families and our livelihoods and our health for your children. And that is absurd. That is absurd. And if you're expecting your kid's teacher to do that, there is something wrong with you.
And you know what?
And let me tell y'all something else.
The bad teacher also has just as much of, like, the bad teachers also make teachers leave. Like, there's nothing worse than being a good teacher and being on a team with a bad teacher, or being the good teacher that has the child 3rd period and the bad teacher teaches your child 2nd period. Because when that child comes from 2nd period to 3rd period, it's like when the grandkids go to grandma and grandpa's house and then come back home to their mama's house. It's like, oh no, what are you doing here? Why are you acting like this? And it's real. It's like the retraining every day. You come in, I don't know why you did that in Miss So-and-so's class, but come in here and sit down. Get ready with your bell ringer. Don't do that.
Listen, and I got a PSA for, hold on, I'm going to put myself, I hope y'all don't mind. This is a PSA from LJ to the parents of the world, okay? You see how your kid acting in that virtual school? You see how your kid's behaving on that Zoom? That's how they act in real class. That's exactly how they act in real class. You're not doing nothing special. It's not because they virtual. It's because they bad. You need to correct that ASAP. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. Them kids bad. They acting like, oh, the virtual is so hard on my child. They just won't sit still. They won't pay attention. Your child was like that before. You mute, Sil. What happened?
Absolutely. Nothing. I'm just, all I'm saying is, as a parent teacher, I mean, I already knew my child was a handful, so it was not a surprise for me. But you know what I mean? And he's at the house, and I had to get real tight with him during his lessons. I understand that, but the parents that are in denial is a real thing. But I don't know. Let me see where we're at. We might want to be wrapping this chat up a little soon.
Yeah, it's time to wrap it up. Oh, but before we do, just a reminder, Freedom School is open for registration. If you want people
Absolutely.
like me and Celia teaching your kids, you know what I'm saying? I teach one thing, I teach theater, but Celia's teaching book club. We've got a wonderful math teacher, Johanse. You can just go to the website, maroonarts.com, click on Freedom School. That'll give you all the information that you need to know about enrolling your child in our enrichment classes. This is anti-bias education. Sorry, I meant to leave that out. This is anti-bias education. This is education that is outside of Western frameworks. We're taking a different approach. We're taking control. We're taking agency. And we are teaching our kids what's really real. And like I said the other day, it's for allies too. If you want your kid to know that the Civil War was about slavery and not states' rights.
Come on now.
Mind
You
blown.
should send them to some educators that will teach them that. And those educators are going to have to be outside of your regular school day.
Yes.
So please hit us up. Enroll your kid today. Classes start on October 24th. The first day of class is October 24th. If you want any more information, send us an email. We are so happy to hear from you, to respond to you. We've gotten some really nice notes after our open house the other day. If you missed the open house, go back and watch it, where you can meet all the teachers from Freedom School. So drop us a line. If you have opinions, we love opinions. So if you got more comments,
we like that.
We love it. If you got comments, opinions, and you're watching this on a replay, drop it in the comments, because we will come and find you and talk to you about it. And before I begin this, go ahead, Sil.
I was going to say, next semester, we may be able to even get Miss Bianca Kemp here to teach a social studies class for us next semester. I'm just going to throw her on Front Street. She's been a part of the planning as we created, as LJ invented Maroon Arts and Culture. But she has always been here as a guiding force of instruction and leadership. And so hopefully we will get Bianca Kemp next semester, starting maybe in January, to teach a social studies course for us if she wants to get her feet back in the classroom. She's been in administration for a little while, but she might be open to something like that. So I'm gonna throw that on Front Street, but we are looking to expand to science and social as well, to have an offering for that. Because I teach English and Johanse teaches math, and LJ's teaching theater. So we need science and we need social studies. And so we are looking at Ms. Kemp, and we have another friend in mind for science. And so we're gonna get
the whole core curriculum covered before it's all over. We got y'all babies. We got them. We're gonna
and you'll be able to pull them out of traditional public school and unschool them and have them with educators of color, teaching them relevant curriculum. And that is I feel one of the ultimate goals of the educational program at Freedom School.
Yes, and if you want to support the mission of Freedom School, you know what I'm saying? If you want to help me recruit these bomb teachers, you got Celia Carey with the MED, you got Binks with the MA, you got Johanse with the UCLA and the 20 years of experience. These teachers ain't cheap, okay? I got to pay these teachers. If y'all want to help me pay these teachers, y'all show me some love on the Cash App. Put 5 on it, okay? I'm not saying the future depends on it, but if it did, $5 would not be very much to ask. So, before we do the benediction, we got to do the offering. So, like I said, you got $5 to spare. Go ahead and throw it on that Cash App, because I got to pay these teachers, because they out here doing real work for these kids. And I appreciate both of y'all. And y'all know that I love y'all. I really do. Yes. Shout out to the Pleasant Grove for bringing the 3 of us together.
Yeah, shout out to the Grove. Shout out to the Grove for bringing us together. We would not be here today if it was not for the dirty, dirty Grove. So here we are.
Great things happen in the Grove.
Yes.
So they say. It ain't that pleasant, but it is what it is.
All right, ladies. I'm gonna let y'all get back to y'all kids and hanging out. I hope y'all have a good weekend, and I'm gonna holler at y'all over the weekend for sure.
It's been fun. Y'all go to maroonarts.com. See y'all later.
Bye, everyone.